hope you can hear me. Can you just comment on the chat if you can hear me clearly?
Yes, sir, you're audible, loud and clear.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I think we'll just quickly get started. I just wanted to do a small poll to understand who are in my audience. There's a few people who have joined. I'll just send a poll and you'll be able to see the poll in your screen and try to take it. Okay. We'll just do two small polls and I want you to give your feedback. I just started a poll. Go ahead and answer. What's your highest education qualification? Go ahead and give your. Okay, we have a lot of people answering. Good. So many of you have chosen any other. If you can choose to give a comment on your chat, what is your education qualification? Can you just comment about it? Those who have chosen any other in the poll, can you just put it on the chat? What kind of highest education qualification you have? Excellent. Thank you. Good. We have a good mix of audience. Excellent. Okay. Great. Let's just do one more poll and then get started. Okay. So here is another poll. You can choose any one language. That's fine. You don't have to. If you can understand one language very well, it's fine. Choose English if you can understand English. Okay. Good. I think majority of us can understand English. That's fine. Great. Good. So let's get started. I'll go ahead and share my screen and share my. I hope you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, perfect. So let's get started. I think good evening for to all of you. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I have spent quite a bit of time in the industry. I've done a lot of mistakes in my career. I've mentored a lot of people in my career, and it's a pleasure to always interact with anybody across the world when it comes to education. So I'm passionate about two areas, which is education and then technology. So that's what I do. I'm an educational technologist. So here's a slide that I always love to show whenever I start any session, and these three are very powerful quotes. And if you can put these three together, and if you can understand the essence of these three quotes, pretty much I can just sign off the session. I don't need to talk anymore. The first quote is one of my favorite, or actually the most favorite. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. A beautiful quote by Mr. Alvin Toffler, Dr. Alvin Toffler. He's a futurist. Uh, he's a well-known researcher. Now, the power of this quote is that when we grew up, if you are somebody who was born in 1980s, 90s, you would have heard your parents say that you try to learn how to read and write, otherwise you'll be an illiterate. The focus was always on read and write. And in fact, now the last 10-15 years, the focus has actually changed from read and write to press and type, because we have been working with smartphones and all kind of technology. The real skill that we're going to see in the 21st century is not about whether you know how to read and write. It's about whether you can learn something on your own, unlearn what you have learned incorrectly, and relearn it. So this is a very powerful quote. The second quote by none other than Isaac Asimov. If you have not read his books, you should. Very, very beautiful books, very beautiful science fictions. And he says self-education is the only kind of education there is. The only function of a school, in this case, school means a campus, a college or a school or a university. The only function of such an institution is to make self-education easier. Failing that, it does nothing. That is, what he means to say is, if an institution does not help you learn by yourself, if an institution just teaches to you, it does nothing. If it basically makes you a better learner, makes you learn the way you like to learn, that's the institution that's the best. And the third quote is by Oscar Wilde. uh, Education is an admirable thing, but it is well to remember from time to time that nothing that is worth learning can be taught. Okay, so this is a phenomenal quote in that. Just let me just go back to my slides to make sure. Yeah, this is a phenomenal quote, because you'll see in this, in a couple of slides, I'll show you how there is a lot of things that we have learned. Either we have learned it incorrectly, or we don't understand the true essence of learning it, or we just didn't learn it in a school, right? So I want, these three quotes put together will basically convey the essence of what we are going to cover today. So without further delay, let me go into the uh, topic. I know the topic that Vignesh shared was Learn Education 4.0. Here is the first surprise for you. There is nothing called Education 4.0, because the moment you understand what is Education 4.0, you'll realize that the word education has to be replaced by learning. So it's actually Learning 4.0 and not Education 4.0. So let's look at what we'll be covering. First, we need to understand what is changing. I mean, anything you're learning, any education you're going through, any degree you're getting, it solves three broad reasons. One, the government wants all its citizens to be educated so they can find a job, so they can be employed, so they can pay tax. And that's how people are happy. You are able to get money with which you can buy, you can experience the country, you can travel. So one is government has an agenda for citizens to learn. That's why there is an education system. Second, the people who get educated have to go and work in a factory, in a company, in an industry, and they want certain skills. That's why there is an education system. Third, there is, in some countries, the education system very well aligns with the religion in the country, right? In India, it's a secular country, so we don't have too much of religious interference in education. But then we have certain types of schooling which are very religion based, right? So there are only three major reasons why any education system exists. It's the government mandate, what the government wants to achieve, what the industry wants from it, that is basically people who are talented to work in their factories, or what a spiritual group wants from it. These are the only three broad reasons for any education to happen. But in this three, we're not going to talk about spiritual, we're not going to talk about government. We're going to talk about what is the education that the industry wants and what is changing. So, first thing we'll understand is what is changing. Second thing we'll understand is what I think is happening. Okay. And I will probably, not share the third part. I will leave it to you as a kind of exercise for you to take it forward and Google it and find it yourself. So let's go to the first part, Industry 4.0, what is changing. I'm sure I saw a couple of sessions that you had gone through, which talked about what is Industry 4.0. By the way, if you have any questions, just post it on the chat. I'll be keeping on checking the chat once in a while. I know you've had a session before. Some of you might have attended it. You kind of have heard the terminology Industry 4.0, but I'll just spend a very small, couple of minutes to explain to you what is Industry 4.0, because without that, you'll not understand what is Learning 4.0. So, as you would have seen in many places, industry, as in, let me take an example, right? Let's take an example of your ever silver plate, or your boxes, your plastic boxes that you Tupperware, or any kind of storage boxes, or the soda screw, right? The soda bottle, or the rim of a glass. Any product we are using, right? Anything, it can be manufactured in five ways. Before people invented gears and machines and how to power those machines using steam, they actually had to make it manually. For example, in before 1700s, if somebody had to make a pan, a plate, they have to actually take it one by one, either using a wood or using metal. They have to do it one by one, and they have tools in their house, or in their working garage, with which they will make it. That's how they made it. When steam power, the first steam engine was invented, and the steam power and mechanical gears, when they came together, that's the first revolution that happened. People started realizing that you can make the same pot, the same cup, the same bowl. You can make it not one at a time, but you can actually make it in a mass production, right? You can make it 10 at a time, 100 at a time. And when all the wars were happening, people wanted guns, people wanted helmets, people wanted, you would have seen a lot of movies where they'll show you soldiers who will have backpacks with plates in them, with cups in them. So actually, it's a lot of wars is what has propelled mass production, because people wanted basic amenities to be carried by soldiers and things like that. So first generation of the industry coupled mechanical gears. How do I operate a machinery using gears and pulleys and levers, mechanical things, but powered by steam. And that's how they started manufacturing, let's say 10 plates at a time or 20 plates at a time. And then towards 1870 or 1850s, electrical energy was invented. People started making motors, electrical motors, not the small motors that you have in a small robot, but big motors, what you use for water pumping, AC motors. So these kind of motors help them to actually mass manufacture at a much faster pace. So make steam, if you look at the industry 1.0, for me to run a particular machinery that is actually taking a press, taking a metal sheet, pressing it and making a plate out of it, and to do this kind of press using a machine and using pulleys, I need to use steam. To generate that kind of steam, there is only a limited way that I can do it. But the moment they invented electrical energy, which is motors, they could press faster, right? And they could make more plates, more cups, very fast. So mass production was faster. So that is what industry 2.0 was. And after 2.0, now you have a lot of machines that are manufacturing using electrical energy. Then electronics was born. So between 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, if you look at it, so they in 1.0 they will have a kind of a press. You will put a raw material or a metal sheet in. You will turn on the steam. It will press it. So that's how you got one plate. And in 2.0, you'll have a button, and you turn on the button. You basically run the motor, and the motor will just start feeding in the metal sheet, and they'll start pressing. That's how 2.0 came. The 3.0 is more of putting some sensors. Do we have enough sheet to pass? If you have enough sheet to pass, at what time? Once the sheet is in position, look at the sensors and see whether the sheet is in position. Then those kind of electronics where it actually looked at sensing whether the raw material is there, sensing what to be done. So that kind of thing started coming in, and that is where electronics helped mass manufacturing to be faster. Even till this point, there needed a human intervention. Now we came to industry 4.0. That is, if machines can operate using electricity, if electronics can control when to operate at what speed, and if two machines can talk to each other. For example, there is one machine that is feeding the sheets, and another machine that is cutting the sheets, and another machine that is pressing the sheets into a plate. If these three machines, in 1.0, each of these machines were operating using steam. In 2.0, each of these machines, instead of steam, they started using electrical motors. In 3.0, they had electronic sensors. In 4.0, these machines are talking to each other. They're talking to each other to say, once the sheet machine has sent the sheet, once the sheet has landed in the correct place, then the cutting will happen. Once the cutting happens, automatically, so that automation of the entire flow, the only intervention for the human being is to ensure that whether the sensor is working properly, whether the cutter is working properly, whether the mold is correct mold. That's the only thing that the human intervention needs to be. So I hope you kind of understood what that industry 1.0 to 4.0 was. I'm sorry. Okay, so with that quick background, let's jump to the session. Our session is not about industry 4.0. Our session is about what is education and what has changed between these four generations of industries. So now let us look at some of these questions. What happened from one generation of industry to another? Back in 1780s, when you have the mechanical powered textile mills, mechanical powered, steam powered engines, steam powered manufacturing plants, what happened? How did the industry hire people? Now you need to understand, to generate steam, you need to have water. You need to have some way of converting the water into steam, which means it is coal or some kind of heating source, wood or coal to burn and make the steam, right? You can't make the steam in Chennai and pump it to Bangalore. It's not possible. So the plants or the manufacturing companies which used steam were near where the steam raw material was, which is water and coal and wood. So they will be hiring very locally. I want people who want to work in my steam plant. That steam plant or the steam based manufacturing plant will be very close to the steam plant and probably in the same factory. And I am there's no way these students can, people who I hire can learn about how to manufacture steam in 1780s. There is no way they can learn about how to manufacture steam in an industry, how to manufacture it, operate a machinery using steam. There is no college that is teaching it, right? So the only way they could learn was only on the job. They had to hire locally. They had to train only in the industry only after they join a job. Because they had to train only after joining, and because those machineries were expensive, the timing for training that was taken by the factory was very high. They took their own pace. Very slowly they train people, because if they make a mistake, the entire machinery will fail, and it's very expensive. Very few plants are there across the world, right? At that time I'm talking about. And whatever I need to learn once I join a job, what I needed to learn in 1780s, if I knew how I have to operate one steam machine or one steam based machine, or how to generate steam, that is what I will do for my entire life. Nothing changed. The formula to make steam was constant. Take water, boil it, steam, done. The formula to feed the steam into a mechanism was constant. Pass it through a pipe, maintain the temperature. The formula to run a mechanical gear was constant. And by the time mechanical engineering was quite there. I mean, first mechanical engineering happened when they invented wheel. So that is thousands and thousands of years ago. So no change was happening, right? And none of the employer said, you know what, I need you to innovate. Because if they try something new, if they break the machine, that machine is costly. So they will say, don't do any thinking on your own, just follow what I'm telling, right? Don't try to do anything out of the box. So this was what your 1780s was. There was absolutely no room for somebody to explore. No training that they can get in schools, no colleges that can give you degrees in how to work in a steam powered factory. It is all that you learned in a job. Now if you fast forward to industry 2.0, industry 2.0 was electricity based. Now in 1800s, that is 200 years before now, or 150 years before now, where do you think they generated electricity? Where did the electricity come from? Did you have so much distribution to send electricity? Only in the last 10 years India electrified almost all its villages. 150 years back, would there be electricity everywhere across the world? You tell me. What do you think? In 1870s, would there be electricity across the world? Use the chat. Tell me what do you think would have happened? No, thanks, Abhishek. Right? So there will be only few places where you will get electricity. So only where there is electricity. And back in 150 years back, nobody knew how to effectively transmission that electricity using high tension cable. You see these big towers everywhere where you can send the power from one state to another state, one country to another country. That technology was very, very early. They didn't have that kind of power generation or power distribution capabilities. So the only way somebody could make run a factory using electricity was, you need to be close to where the electricity is produced, right? So the first factories, that's why what happened was, if you look at the early histories of factories like Johnson and Johnson, or any of these big factories that are existing, like Procter and Gamble, this 100-year-old 200-year-old factories, they would have started in an area where they have close source of electricity, maybe waterfall based hydro electric power generation was there, or thermal power generation near a nuclear plant, or near a thermal power steam based power generation, right? So they would have set up their factory closer to that, right? So but around that area, a lot of factories would have come. For example, if near Niagara Falls, they put a power plant to generate electricity, or near some waterfall there was a electricity generation plant, and that electricity was generated. Remember, electricity, once it is generated, it has to be supplied. It can't be stored. Back in 1870s, so all the factories would have come around it. So it's a region. So that's how the in factory industrial regions started forming. At that time, by that time, there was some structure available, schools, colleges, and you still could not learn about running a motor, but you could learn about basic electricity. What is electricity? What is positive? What is negative? Ions, basic physics, basic chemistry you could learn, but you could still not work with a AC motor in a college. The basics you could learn. That's what you will come trained something in college. The time taken to learn from the basics to running a motor was not so high like in the steam era, right? Here you could literally, on the job learn quicker, because you are not operating such complex machinery is still complex, but it's slightly lesser complex, right? Or rather, you had more source to learn about it. So if you look at it, what's happening, I hope you're understanding what I'm showing, right? There has been, as you move from industry 1.0 to 2.0, the people who are going to work in the factory, slowly the expectation is you come prepared. I will train you, but not so much. Whatever I train you, you have to do exactly like I say. Maybe a little bit you can try. If you go to industry 3.0, industry 3.0, industries, factories started coming all across the world. Automotive, car manufacturing plants came across all across the world. Not mobile manufacturing, but telephone manufacturing or insulator manufacturing, train manufacturing, car manufacturing, bus manufacturing, parts, pans, everything that you need to manufacture was being done all across the world, right? So the industry is going to hire from everywhere. They need people everywhere. They can't hire only from the skill, only for the skill that I need specifically. For example, I need people who understand a high level of how PLC controllers, how sensors work, how embedded systems work, how some type of machinery work, lathe works, how forge works, how. So only very very specialized machines they recruited locally, but to run the factory, wherever the factory was, they were recruiting. So if you take a company like Coca-Cola, or if you take a company like Bosch or Bell or Texas Instruments, any company that is global, Procter and Gamble, all these guys had factories all over the world. They were hiring the basic people, entry level people all over the world. They said, you know what, since I'm hiring so many people, and since what I'm hiring for right now, everything is slowly started, you're getting those knowledge in college and school. They started telling you learn from school and come. And they said, once you join me, I will train only little, I will not train too much, right? So you look at what happened. This is what I'm telling you, all of this from an industry perspective, right? Education not necessarily did this. Okay, that's what we will see in the next slide. Industry kept changing. They changed from local industries to global industries. They changed from expecting low order of skills to high order of skills. They changed from not wanting people to innovate to, today if you go to a company, if you look at a job description, they'll say, I want somebody to innovate. Innovation is they want innovators even at an entry level, right? They want you to be having that kind of creative thinking, problem solving skills. So if you look at the transition, this is what has happened on the industry side. Now if you look at industry 4.0, it's a very interesting phase. Industry 4.0 is a place where the industries are present across the world, but you don't have to be there. If I need to, I'm now, you are now in a training class. You are, I'm your trainer, but I know about your industries and your areas, but I'm not in the physical location as you. I'm taking it from my own location. That is global, right? I have a global knowledge. I'm able to apply it locally. I'm able to apply it from anywhere, right? And industry today, if you look at it, what we call a skill gap, or 85% of engineers, they don't have the right skills to go into the industry. If you look at it, industry is like tired of saying, I should not teach you programming, I should not teach you analytics, I should not teach you Python, I should not teach you basics of operating a CNC machine, a milling machine, a lathe. I should not teach you all of that. There is enough and more places to learn outside, right? Except for IT industry, except for one specific industry, most of the other industries are all, even at an entry level, if you look at how they are hiring based on what the person who's applying, what you already know. They're not looking at taking and putting you in a training, and making you sit in bench and you can take 8 months to learn, 10 months to learn, except for IT industry. And IT industry, an exception, maybe we can talk about it in a different class. Okay, I will not get into it. If you look at, I'll just tell you some interesting trivia, and you that might trigger you. You can go and Google it. Go and find out how much percentage of colleges in India have campus placements. And let's say 20% or 30%. You find out how many percentage of colleges in India have campus placements. Second question, how many of those colleges, how much percentage of those campus placements are from IT industry and non-IT industry? You will see majority of the placement is only from IT industry. Now, the third important question, how much of actual people are working in IT industry compared to other industries in India? And I will give you the answer to it. Only 12% of India's workforce works in IT industry, and that's a very, very bad equation. 80 to 90% of campus placements happens from one industry, which is IT industry, but that IT industry is only employing 10 to 12% of the Indian labor, which means 90% or 85% of India's labor is not coming from campus placements, right? If don't even agree with me, go and Google it, go and do your research. I'll tell you one more statistics. India is the only country that has campus placements. In all other countries, you have something called as job fairs. You don't have campus placements. Okay, so these are some trivias. You can go and Google it. If you want to have a debate, Google about me, find my phone number, call me, we'll have a debate, right? But if you leave IT industry away, if you look at all the industries, we are right now in an industry 4.0 revolution, which is industry is not having patience to sit and train you. Industry is actually expecting you to learn the skills by yourself, because the source to learn it is everywhere. You can learn whatever skills you want sitting at any place you want, right? And once you join the job, they are saying your learning should not stop. I don't care whether you are educated. I care whether you are a learning professional, right? I don't care whether, if you tell me that if your education is stopped, you are educated, past participle, I'm done with my learning. The factory will tell you, the industry will tell you, I don't want you, right? They want people who will keep on learning. So this is what industry change has been. Any questions? Any questions? I'll just look at the chat briefly. So we can debate about all of this, but really this is how industry's expectation has changed. If you look at it in compare it with what happened in the education sector, right? And you need to understand what happened in education 1.0, 2.0 and 3.0, three generations of education system as a whole. You will understand why we need learning 4.0. Okay, so what is education 2.0? Sorry, education 1.0. When the industry 1.0 started, when factories started forming by using steam power and mechanical gears, pulleys, levers, ratchet wheels, conveyor belt. So when industry started that way, at that time, the school system in the world was not organized. I mean, you did not have a school in every city, every village, every town, every part of every country. You did not have CBSE. You did not have central curriculums. Only rich people had access to schools, and what they had access to was basically very, very one-on-one tutors, one-on-one coaches who will teach them how to learn, like how we have seen in our ancient kings, their the prince and princesses, they will have a guru, and they will come and teach you, right? What they teach you is up to the guru, up to the tutor. They did not have a curriculum, they did not have a standard structure. This was back 150 years back or 200 years back, right? At that time, the person who is the student, the learner, that person actually came in and they were learning. They were a learner first. They were a learner, and the tutor told them, guided them what to learn. And the tutor designed the curriculum. The instructor, the personal coach, the instructor, private tutor that they have, they define the curriculum. That's how industry 1.0 was. People needed for industry 1.0 only came from this kind of education 1.0. Industry moved to 2.0 in 1870s, but then education took another 30 years to catch up. Only by early 1900s, across the world, every country started forming something called as K-12 education, undergraduate education, postgraduate education. Most of the education was government funded. Very few was private, like Harvards of the world, Oxfords of the world, Cambridges of the world became private, right? At that time, if you look at the early 1900s, if you look at the history of the world, a lot of the people who got into education system came from army, military, navy. So they basically, the way, any army, military, navy works, they all work based on standard processes, standard operating processes. They have to follow what time they have to get up, how they have to stand in line, height order. When you blow the whistle, you have to come and stand in line. When you ring the bell, you have to come for lunch. So this is the model that they used and applied it to education, right? So in early 1900s, they started, across the world, the structure started forming, and the student who was actually already a learner, by birth we are a learner, we are very curious. But the focus of education 2.0 was, you can be a learner, but I am preparing you to work in a factory. So I will make sure that by the time you finish my education, you will be a elbowed worker, right? So they put a model and put a curriculum to basically make sure that there will be a elbowed worker at the end of it. This was education 2.0. There's one question. What will be the change in industry after 5 years from now? Will it be industry 5.0? Okay, we'll come to that, right? $1 million question, and it's like basically if you can be an astrologer on that, right? But more importantly, in education 2.0, the intent of education 2.0 was to create somebody who will go and work in a factory. Okay, that was the intent, because it was the industrial people who came and set up the schools. It was the people who came from the military and kind of army and battle background who came and set up the processes. If you look at most of the early researchers, early pedagogy science, that is research papers, if you look at the people who have researched it, you will see that they've had a military background. Okay, so indirectly or directly, it was the military lifestyle and factory lifestyle. Actually, military people went and set the factory lifestyle, because you have to work in a high risk area. You have to be there has to be standard processes. You need to wear a helmet in a particular place, not wear a helmet in a particular place. You need to stand in a certain order. So all this is how a factory was run, and those people came to education and they set up the education the same way, right? Industry moved to industry 3.0 when the electronics was invented, when circuits and when sensors and capacitors, transistors, when these kind of things got invented, when logical circuits got invented, right? That is when industry moved to industry 3.0. But education had to wait another 30 to 40 years to catch up. But the mistake that the education did was, by the time education system across the world caught up to industry 3.0, they only solved 3 problems. Problem number 1, across the world, everybody was having different levels of somewhere there was a PUC, somewhere there was a 12th, some different boards were there, different UG, Bachelor of Engineering, Bachelor of Science. So across the world, by early 2000, there was a consensus. In fact, you can Google for something called as National Occupational Standards, World Trade Organization or International Trade Organization, International Labor Organization started playing a role where every country accepted, if I say electrical engineer at this skill level in India, it is this skill level in Australia, it is this skill level in Germany. So that acceptance started forming, right? So more and more organized school sector, organized college sector started forming. Remember, between industry 2.0 and 3.0, internet was invented, but education 3.0 completely shunned internet. They did not want to use internet, right? Say they were afraid of internet. Even though internet was invented, it was very clear that that is the way forward. Education 3.0 was like, if you use internet, people will use it for all kind of bad purposes. We will not use it. We will not use internet at all. We will not encourage smartphones in the class. Even today, education institutions don't allow phones, don't allow open internet, right? So slowly what happened was that organized structure came across all the countries. Almost any country you go, you migrate to any country, you will know which standard your son or daughter has to go, or you have to join. You know how to apply to a different university in any country. You know how to migrate as a student from India to Australia or US or UK. That structure came, and then it became increasingly private. But the one thing that did not change between 2.0 and 3.0 was factory model. In fact, the factory model became even more prominent, right? The biggest drawback that happened was in education 2.0, in the education sector, the system across the world said, you are a learner, But when you come to me, I'll make you an elbowed worker. But with education 3.0, what happened was they completely removed the learner out of the person. I will show you. I'll prove it to you in the next slide. A naturally born learner became a zero learner, right? And thereby a zero level worker. That is why if you look at many companies, they're telling graduates are unemployable. Okay. So any questions before we jump to learning 4.0? Any questions?
Sir, there are some questions on the questions tab. So
Yeah.
Mr. Srikanth has asked a question. It's like, it is due to this
Okay.
lockdown only in India, quite a few institutions went online teaching, tests, etc. But still, there's a challenge. How do you see blended learning and future of learning in the Indian context?
Excellent. Okay. Excellent question. Srikanth, I'll tell you this, right? I'll go to the get out of the questions tab. You need to remember the telecommunications. If you look at 2G, if you look at 1G, 2G, 3G, right? US was predominantly landline. Okay. Today, US is still lagging behind India in the 3G infrastructure. But they are now starting to invest in the 5G infrastructure. It is always not a serial move. Please understand, there will always be leapfrogging moments. Okay. If you look at Africa, 90% of Africa does not have landlines, but everybody has a smartphone. Everybody is moving towards a smartphone. So they have completely come out of, wired connections. A concept like BSNL will never form in Africa. It will be dead by the time it forms. They will straight away go to Airtel and Geos, right? They will skip a generation. So what you're seeing here is India is in the midst of a generation skip that is happening. Okay. When they will skip, I don't know. But if you look at whether the indications are there, what has government invested? If you look at when Rajiv Gandhi came to power, and when he formed the National Advisory Science Advisory Council, when I think I forgot his name. I forgot his name. So we formed that National Knowledge Network. We started laying, STDPCO become more prominent in India. Slowly, India realized that it is not an STDPCO. They started building something called as a National Knowledge Network. And if you go Google it, you'll understand. Actually, any university in India can apply for a 1 Gbps, 1 Gbps internet connectivity, which the government will fund, which is executed by Reliance and Airtels of the world. But the college in itself does not have the right people to manage it. They don't have a system administrator like who is there in an IT company to beautifully manage it, right? So we are progressing in that direction. I wouldn't say, and when that kind of progress happens, there will be people who will fall through the gaps, right? You saw what happened in Kerala, when they went online, there was a child who committed suicide because she could not attend the online class. Immediately the whole state came together and started buying TVs for people, right? So we are in the transformative moment. Okay, there will be people during this journey, during the transformation, who will lose. Okay, that is how transformation happens, that is how change happens. But as citizens, the one thing that we can do is ensure that if you know of somebody who's struggling, if you have access to technology, you can figure out a way to get that access to them as well. Maybe put a record a video about them, make it viral, get some people to help them to get the access to the technology. So that is what we can do as citizens. So that's what I think, right? So we are definitely going to go into an online learning context. There is no question about it. I am driving such a project for my organization right now. I am in an education institution right now, and you will see when we talk about learning 4.0, you will see why it's more important. So let me go to the next slide. I think we are almost towards the end, but I will. Learning 4.0 is what I want to focus on. And to do that, I will actually ask a few questions, and maybe use the poll to ask these questions, right? So this is a poll. I'll go ahead and answer this, post this poll. Look at the poll and answer me, right? The first question: which subject do you use to drink your tea or coffee? Go ahead and answer the poll. Use your poll and answer it. So somebody says English. To drink tea or coffee, you say you will use English. Somebody says all of the above. So nobody is saying maths. Oh, all of the above says maths. Somebody says biology. Great. All of us came from the same primary education, right? But we seem to differ. The more you think about it, you will see what is the answer. and I'll explain it to you. So let's pause it for a while, right? There's more questions there, right? Great. Sam Pitroda, yeah, that's the person that I was not getting the name. So let's come to this question. We are told when we grow up, to be successful, you need education. One of the things that you do as a successful person is to sit and drink coffee or tea. Am I correct? There are people who can't afford tea or coffee every 3 times a day, 4 times a day. If you are successful, you are able to buy tea or coffee, you are able to have it. So directly or indirectly, your education should have helped you achieve it, right? Now let's see how that education happened with a set of subjects. Those subjects then should help you how to drink tea or coffee, but we never learned it this way. Let me tell you how. If you look at tea or coffee, you take some powder, you mix it in a ratio of water and milk, you boil it to a certain temperature, you add some sugar. So you're actually doing a chemistry experiment. But before that, your mind has to say, I want to drink tea, which means there is a biology that's happening. There is electrochemical energy that is getting generated in your nerve. It travels to your tongue. It generates enzyme that wants you to drink tea or coffee. Then you go to the shelf. There are 2 bottles there: tea powder, rat poison powder, right? So which do you pick? You pick the tea powder, not the rat poison powder, because you can learn what is written there, which means you are using your English or Tamil skills or language skills. Once you take it, you're actually doing a chemistry experiment. Only thing is that recipe is not given like a chemistry experiment. It does not say take a pinch of take 20 grams of 2 milligrams of the formula for tea powder, add it in a round bottom flask using a Bunsen burner, raise it to a temperature of 120 Fahrenheit, whatever. It does not give you a recipe like that, right? So but you're actually doing a chemistry experiment to make that tea. And once the tea is ready, you're pouring it into, from a big vessel you would have made it, and you would have poured it into smaller vessels. You're actually experimenting or applying the property of liquids. By pouring it into a flat vessel, that liquid, the tea, will take the shape of the flat vessel. If you pour it into a tumbler, it will take the shape of the tumbler. Remember, you did this experiment in a physics lab. If you pour water, you will have different kinds of pipettes and burettes, and whichever one you pour into, it will take that shape. That's a property of a liquid. You're actually doing it every day when you make tea. Now, after you've made it, what you're doing is your mind is actually calculating the parabolic path between the tea tumbler and your in your mouth. It is calculating what is the parabolic path. You're not doing a trial and error to bring the tea to your mouth. It is taking a concrete parabolic path. Your mind has already calculated that parabolic path, and your body is actually using a fulcrum movement, a kinetic energy, physics, what you read in physics, to actually, first of all, you have to grab the tumbler, which means you have to use friction, and that you're reading separately somewhere in physics. And then once you grab the tumbler, you have to follow the parabolic path, which where you're using the fulcrum movements, lever movements. And when you're bringing it to your tongue, if the tea is hot, you spread it in your tongue, you allow it to cool. That is Bernoulli's principle. Surface area increases, temperature cools, right? Or if you PV is equal to nRT, if you would have read that formula. Or if your tea is hot, you're blowing with your mouth with a small aperture. Now you don't blow your tea like you blow it like you are keeping a small aperture. Why do you do it? Because when the gas comes out and suddenly expands, when your air comes out of your mouth and suddenly expands, it is cool. So you are blowing, you are generating cool air like that from your body, which is actually hot. So just to drink a small cup of tea, you're using English, physics, maths, but nobody taught us like this. You should go and Google why, right? Yes. Now, if you look at other questions, and these are the questions I want you to think about, and that's why I keep telling you, Education 4.0 is not Education 4.0. It is Learning 4.0. The question that Shrikant asked is expecting a system to give you a laptop, a system to give you internet, a system to give you a curriculum, a system to give you a timetable. Let me ask the next question, right? Can prime meridian pass through Delhi? You have the 0-degree longitude that passes through Greenwich, right? Can Greenwich meridian pass through Delhi? If you tell me the answer is yes, put in chat why. If you tell me the answer is no, put in chat why. Yes, we are relearning. Okay, so I'll give you the answer. The reason that 0-degree longitude goes through Greenwich meridian time, or Greenwich standard time, why we are saying Indian Standard Time is 5.5 hours behind it is not because of any geographical reason or physical reason. It's not because Earth's magnetism is better there, Earth's whatever equator. It's nothing to do with that. It is only because English people were better sailors. So they had established an observatory with which they started creating maps. Most of the maps they created were based out of keeping themselves as the center. If you start creating a map, you will think of yourself as the center, right? If you open Google Maps, it starts from where you are, not from wherever it likes. So because they already created so many maps, keeping them as the center, when the World Congress or World Cartography Map Congress came together and decided which will we assume as center, since many work has already been done as assuming that as a center, everybody agreed that will be the center. So it is actually a political reason why Greenwich Meridian Time passes through Greenwich. If tomorrow India becomes a superpower in GPS, India becomes a superpower in creating maps, we can say, I will not follow GMT, my 0-degree longitude passes through Delhi. There is nothing that stops you. You just have to get enough number of countries to agree to you. That's all, right? It is nothing to do with physics. It's nothing to do with geography. Now, let me give you another question, and I'll show you a picture for it. Can two ends of a straight line meet? Put it in the chat. Can two ends of a straight line meet? What do you think? If I draw a straight line, can two ends of it meet? Exactly. So if you look at, I'll give you an answer. If you said the answer is no, you're wrong. Because here is a straight line which is the equator. The moment I put it in a globe, they meet. That's a circle. So your answer should not be no. Your answer should be, are you asking in 2-dimension or 3-dimension? If you answer the question as no, as two ends of a straight line cannot meet, you're wrong. Your answer should be a question back to me. Are you asking in 2D or are you asking a spherical geometry or linear geometry? What are you asking, right? So let me ask another question. This is an interesting question, right? Let's say a baby is born in your family with 5 fingers, right? Or Hrithik Roshan, the famous actor, has 6 fingers. Did Hrithik Roshan's mother go to the doctor and say this is out of syllabus? Right? Did Hrithik Roshan's mother say that? But if you look at 16 years of our education or 18 years of our education, this one excuse is ruining the system. You can never ask a question that you have not taught because it is out of syllabus. Why can't I expect the student to learn? The problem is that person is a student, not a learner. If the person was a learner, I can ask any question to that person. The person is a student. That's the question what Srikanth was saying. If you are a student who expects to be part of that digital blended learning where you expect government to give you laptop, you expect that to happen, you will be a student and you will become a consequence. You will fall into that gap. But if you are a learner, you will start figuring out, how do I get those resources? Do I know anybody who can lend me a laptop? Is there a computer center near me where I can go and learn? Is there a government funded lab or an NGO that is near me where there is a computer center? If I look at it as a learner, I will try to source resources. Okay, just 5 more minutes and we'll go into a question and answer, right? Last question. How many 90-degree angles can a triangle have? Again, what is your answer? Let me watch the chat. What is the answer? How many 90-degree angles can a triangle have? Josephine says 1. Great. So let's practice it. Okay, again, I just gave you one question before. Let me draw a triangle. I will draw a triangle from India to the South Pole. Okay, from there I will draw a triangle back to, let's say, this Gabon, back to India, back to equator here. So there's one straight line that goes from the equator below India to the North Pole. One straight line that goes to Gabos, to the equator, then Gabon, and one straight line that comes back to the equator below India. So this is a triangle, right? You're telling me there can be only one straight line. But if you look at it in a geometry, in a spherical geometry, this is a 90-degree, this is a 90-degree, this is a 90-degree. So I can have 3 90 degrees. Right? Do you understand what I'm saying? So look at what education has done to us. And we are still asking for the education system to change. What we need to ask is the learning system to change. What is the learning system? It is us, it is me. So rather than asking a question saying the system has to change, we have to ask a question saying, what should I change? What change should I make for myself to become learning 4.0, right? So the last question, and this is a very important question. All of us were born, we had parents. Most important thing a civilization, any human race, anybody in human race has to do is to breed, right? Any race, dogs, they get partners, they have kids. That's how dogs race goes up. Rhinoceros, that's how it goes up. Otherwise that species goes extinct. If our species has to exist, we have to reproduce, we have to have more children. That is the most important task for sustaining our race. But we don't go to any college to do parent engineering for it. No parent has done a BTech parent engineering. None of us have done a diploma in how to operate a smartphone. None of us have done a certificate course in how to do e-commerce shopping, online shopping. None of us have done a advanced diploma in how to operate a TV remote. None of us have done a diploma in sambar making, dal making, chapati making. None of us have done any certificate, any degree, anything formal for most of the critical things in our life. But suddenly when it comes to, let's say, I want to learn about big data, data science, artificial intelligence, right? We can go and take a course, nothing wrong in it. But if you go and take the course thinking that the person on the other side will make me an expert, completely wrong. We have to go to any course as a learner first, not as a student, as a learner. If you are a good learner, any course, it doesn't matter the quality of the course, any program, any school, any faculty can make you super duper. Okay, so that's a thought I want to leave you with. There's just one other slide I had, which was about education 3.0 and 4.0. I'll just spend 1 minute on it and I'll stop. If you look at 1.0 to 3.0, these were the kind of skills that was focusing on. There were some courses that you would have done about problem solving, some courses in our school, college about, meeting other people, writing a letter. These are the courses that we typically learned in a 1.0 to 3.0 world. What 4.0 needs are actually every student or every learner today, whether they are going into IT or not IT, whether they are going to work in a chemical factory or a civil engineer, anybody, whether they want to become a musician, even A.R. Rahman is using technology, right? Anybody who want to go to anything has to learn, must learn technology. There is no compromise, right? Anybody who wants to learn, who wants to be a better learner, has to know how to experiment, how to prototype, how to do and learn, how to tinker, right? How to bring that curiosity back. If you see small children, if you give them some building blocks, they'll try to do something. If you give it to adults, they will be like, oh, this is boring, yeah, right? But that kind of curiosity, how do you build? Then you need to know how to learn by yourself. How can I find the right mentors for me? How can I become pals with the mentor? How can I build a relationship with the mentor where the mentor will coach me? How do I identify who is the right mentor? Where can I find the mentors from? How can I make the internet work for me and make me learn? So that is personal learning network. Then last thing is, how do I learn by myself? How do I learn how to learn? How do I unlearn what so some of the examples that I just told you, all are examples of bad learning in our mind, bad lessons in our brain. How do I unlearn it, right? So these are the skills that learning 4.0. So education 4.0 is nothing but taking every student and making them a learner. If every student becomes a learner and they learn irrespective of going to a school, class, timetable, curriculum, assessment, that becomes education 4.0. Okay, so I'll pause here if you have any questions, and I'll probably unshare my screen. Do you have any questions?
Yes, sir. There are some few questions posted by our participants. So, Mr. Shankar Raghavan asked the question: what will be the future of education and learning? Will it move away from university?
Excellent question, Shankar. I think I have answered it, but I'll still answer it again. What is the purpose of a degree, right? If you think, let me ask in a different way. If you have a Mercedes-Benz car, you want to get a driver for that car, who will you hire? Will you hire somebody who says, I have a driving license, so I know how to drive? Or will you hire somebody who says that, you know what, I know where to go get a driving license, I'm waiting for the trainer to come and teach me. Once the trainer comes, I will go get a driving license. Will you hire that person to give you a Mercedes-Benz car? Or will you give the car to somebody who has a license, who has driven a Maruti, or ambassador car for a few years, who has a perfect, record of driving it, did not get any traffic violation tickets, who has a proof to show that? Who will you give that car to? Right? So essentially, if university is where you can build all this, yes, university will exist. If university, you can build this with or without the university, then you don't need the university. For example, I am a BTech chemical engineer. Today, I sit in an educational institution. I define the educational technology for the institution. I have worked with the education advisor to the President of India. I sit on the advisory board of many universities. I have no B.Ed, no M.Ed. I don't have a PhD. I don't have an M.Phil. I don't have any certificate in education. Which university did I go to? I just learnt. That's all. Right? I think Srikanth has another question. Is University of Madras, the autonomous colleges are not allowed to innovate. They have a condition that 70% of syllabus content should match with the University of Madras. See, that's why I'm saying, right? Kind of Srikanth's question will answer Shankar's question. If universities don't change with times, if the universities don't realize that it is not education system that needs to change, but the learner that needs to change, the student has to become the learner. If they don't look at it from that perspective, they will perish. Because industry wants a skilled worker. Okay, they don't have time to sit and train people. They will not have time. Even IT industry will move away from training people. Please understand. Only industry that is spending 8 months to 10 months to 12 months for people to wait and get skilled and then go to a customer project is IT industry. No other industry does that. And even IT industry will change. That being said, if an university is not providing an ecosystem for the learner to self-learn, go back to one of the first quotes that I said, what Isaac Asimov said: if the institution does not facilitate learning, it does nothing.
So we have another question from Mr. Sabarisan. He's asking about, is it true robots will plays a role in future?
Absolutely, right? Robots, see, you have to understand this. If somebody tells you that robots are going to come and take your job away, that's wrong. Okay, absolutely wrong. It is the skills that is going to change. For example, you have a phone. That phone has a robo in that called Siri or Apple Siri or Google Assistant. Now that's a robo. You can use it to actually hello Google, schedule a meeting for me. But how many people know how to use it? Right? How many people? So there is going to be skills that are needed for you to learn how to use that robo. If many people will not learn the skills, somebody has to teach that skill. Somebody has to make people a digital citizen. Who is going to teach that? That role is going to be there. Okay. Google has created a robo. Google is going to give you tools wherein any restaurant can book an appointment for anybody through that Google Assistant. But a restaurant owner will not know how to set it up there. They will need to know how. For example, Google Maps came. Did it remove the concept of maps? Did it remove people who are creating maps? No. It created people who are creating businesses on Google Maps, managing the reviews on Google Maps. Robots will take over some part of our work, but it will create new work. Okay, I hope I answered that.
Yes, sir. So we have another question from Ayana Akusami. So he's asking, what will be the change in industry after 5 years from now? Will it be industry 5.0, and which type of industry will be a dominated one?
You can give any number of names to it, any number of definitions to it. Please understand only one aspect. Going to work is not a natural human thing. Do you hear ants coming and telling you, I'm going to work today? Do you hear a bee saying that, my manager is going to do an appraisal for me, so I have to go and collect honey? They do it because that is their life. Human being is the only species on earth who has created this concept called jobs. It is a man-made thing. So there will definitely be, for example, as long as capitalism survives, as long there is capitalism, there are owners of a company who want to make money. They can make more money if they have unemotional beings running the company or running the factory. For example, if they have somebody who's manufacturing something in their company, that person can always come and say, today I'm late because there was a traffic jam. Tomorrow I need to take leave because my son is not well, I have to take it to a doctor. or tomorrow I'm not feeling well, so I will not come to office next 3 days. But if there is a robo, it's not going to complain. So as long as there is a capitalistic boss for any company, they will want robots. Okay. So industry is going in that way. What will it look like 5 years from now? Your guess. You are as good as saying. You can sit and write a science fiction. It can become reality tomorrow. But believe in one thing, whatever people are doing today as monotonous, labor intensive things where there is no mind that is used, there is no creativity or empathy or emotional thing that is used, those all things will move to robots.
Great, sir. We have a question from Mr. Ganesh. He's asking, can we have education with subjects for practical learning and not exam-oriented certificates or degrees?
Can you have what? Sorry, coming in. Please repeat the question.
Can we have education with subjects for practical learning and not exam or exam-oriented certificates or degree?
Absolutely. Tomorrow, if you're going to become a parent, if you're going to have a child, there's nobody who gave a certificate for it. Where did you learn it?
Okay, sir.
Right. So, I'm giving you very funny or very comic answers, but that is the reality. We already have systems like that, but we somehow think that somebody who's a housewife, we think that person is not as good as somebody who's going to work. That is wrong, because that person is learning without a curriculum. You have to go and worship them, right? So we can definitely have a system. I'm a standing example. I don't have any certification, any degree in education. I have sit among with education researchers. I have sit with educational policymakers. I have sat and I've taken training for people. I've taken training for faculties. I've sat on advisory committee of engineering colleges. I didn't have any degree in that, no certificate in that. So where did my system come from?
We have one more question from Mr. Ganesh. So he's asking, like in USA, can home learning education in India will work?
Okay, let me ask another question back to you, Ganesh. In your house, how are you learning when to wake up? How are you learning how to brush your teeth? How are you learning, forget like in USA. How are you learning how to make sambar or how to make anything? How are you learning how to operate the remote in a TV? How are you learning where to go and shop for carrots, where to go and shop for chicken? How are you learning how much to pay and how much to expect as a balance? How are you learning where to keep your money inside the locker and clothes? How are you learning that? You are learning so many things in home. If you ask me, all the skills that people are learning today when they are graduating, they're learning only in home. Very little thing they learn in a classroom. Because whatever they're learning in the classroom, they're learning only for marks. They're not learning it. We are already having only home learning in India.
So we have a question from Mr. Ayanar Akusami. He's asking, what do you think about the companies asking for certificates from a very skilled person, especially in some particular field?
Excellent. I don't have, again, my answer. I have 0 certificates in education, but I'm playing a role in an education institution where nobody asks me certificates. The problem is not you don't have certificates. See, you have to understand from an employer view. Why do they ask for certificates? I asked for a certificate. For example, let's say if you went and did a certificate in Indira Gandhi National Open University and you did a certificate in Indian Institute of Technology, which certificate they will like? They will like the certificate from IIT, not from IGNOU. The reason is what is the perception that the certificate gives? The quality of learning that you have. Is there another way to showcase? I'll give you another example. You go to a bakery, you want to order for a birthday cake. How will you decide whether it is the right bakery to order? Do you go and ask for the certificate from the baker? Do you have a cooking certificate? How do you decide? You will go and ask them to show what is your catalog. You'll go and look at their Facebook review, whether all your customers have given a 5-star review. You'll go and look at them in a website in Google. That's how you'll find. How do you know your Uber driver is good, your Ola driver is good? By looking at a review. He's not having a certificate saying he's an excellent driver.
Yes, I guess that's all for the questions. So probably we audience.
Okay, I will just take 1 minute to wind up.
Yeah, sure.
I'll just take 1 minute to wind up. So the purpose of my session is not to teach anything to anybody, right? Please understand. If you think that I've taught you something, I have failed. The purpose of the session was if I can just trigger the learner in you, right? if I can make you a better learner. That's all. If today, if you get out of this session and if you think that, oh, you know what, I think I can learn by myself, or I think I can at least try to learn by myself. If that is what you learn from this session, I would be the happiest person. That's the intent of the session. I'll just, probably just leave this session with a small poll. I published a poll, and I'm just using the tool to show you how a tool can be used. That's all. I'm just showing you another tool. And I'm sure Vignesh will be sending a poll to you, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the point I'm trying to convey is this session, the intent is not for you to teach or take away. This is session. If you get out of the session and say, I think I can try to learn. I think I need to be a learner. I think Education 4.0 starts with me. If I am the learner, if I am a better learner, if I can learn anything by myself, Education 4.0 will automatically happen. If you exit this session with that understanding, I have achieved what I intended to do. So I will rest my case here. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. I wish you all the very best in whatever endeavors you are going to achieve in your life. If there is any reason you need to reach me for any kind of mentoring, please find me. You know my name. You can Google me. You can easily search me. I'm available. You can contact me. I'm that guy who's like Varun Dasa, Lord Labakadasa, right? You can call me at any point in time. I have mentees calling me at 1 a.m. in the night. So please, if there is any way I can make you a better learner, I'm there for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the sessions. Thank you so much for your valuable time, sir. In fact, we are actually more than learning. The whole thing, like it kind of rewired our way of how we approach education, how we learn things. So thank you so much for giving us such an insight, sir. And especially, I guess many of us from now on, the way we're going to approach the tea or coffee is going to be different, or we're going to think about you, I guess. So thank you so much again, sir, for your wonderful time. Participant, thank you so much. Thank you all for being such a wonderful audience, and you guys always inspire us to do well, to do even more better in our oncoming webinars. So once again, this is Vignesh.